Thank you, Barb, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to all of you for coming out. We're going to get right to the questions. We start by introducing, first of all, Mary Kay Jones is the incumbent for Berkeley District, and Carlton Stockton is the challenger. We begin by asking Mary, besides boards that you've served on, what has been your work in the community?
Well, historically, and first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and all of the citizens for coming out this evening and engaging in the process. Prior to serving on the James City County Board of Supervisors, I served on the James City County Planning Commission representing the Berkeley District for approximately 3 years. Heavily engaged with Boy Scouts of America. I'm a proud mother of an Eagle Scout. Involved in Bayplex Family Martial Arts Center, where my son and I were participants, and involved in fundraising and the leadership team there as well. Volunteered at Claire Bird Baker Elementary School, at Matthew Whaley Elementary School, Berkeley Middle School, and also was involved, as I said, with the Boy Scouts in addition to all of the community service. And initially became engaged, where I ended up here is I lived in Jamestown 1607 for about 10 years, and my home flooded during Floyd, and that's where I really started getting engaged on the community on the county level. Okay. Carlton?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Worthen and League of Women Voters, and thank you, Bill, as a moderator. I'm pleased to be invited and have the opportunity to engage with citizens. In terms of my involvement with the community, it started long before Margaret and I moved here. We were involved with the College of William and Mary. Our son went there. I served on something called the Parent Steering Committee at the college, and then subsequently was asked by Tim Sullivan to serve on the foundation board, where I served six. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. I was just saying I served on the foundation board for the College of William and Mary 6 years. I currently serve on the Muscarelli Museum Board, recently served as chairman of the nominating committee. I serve on the Town Bank Board. I've been active at my church. I served on the vestry at Bruton Parish. And I also serve on the Landing Board currently as the vice chair of that board.
Okay. Moving to some issues, I'll start with Carlton. Do you have a big idea that you want to advance?
Well, not a big idea, but a basic idea. I think what has happened with us in terms of our planning for the county is we've not had a plan. We're kind of thumping along, following the usual development kind of plan, which is find land and then figure out a way to develop it. I think we can be smarter than that. There's a lot of literature out talking about how do you plan. One thing you learn quickly is that planning isn't really being done by the planning board. The planning, if you know something about planning, the planners really review applications of zones that come through against the regulations and the ordinances. So I think we can do better than what we're doing. We ought to figure out how to plan, and we need to do that by figuring out how to create an environment that involves the citizens in the planning process along with developers.
To repeat, do you have a big idea that you want to advance?
Well, I would like to say some issue that I've been promoting and have instructed the county administrator to look into the feasibility of is shifting our vehicles over to CNG, the compressed natural gas, which is far better when you're looking forward to the future of energy independence. It's much less, pollutes significantly less, while the plug-in cars are a nice option. They are not the only option, and that is a direction I would like to see us go in the long term. It will save us money and provide a much better energy alternative. I will say I do know a little bit something about planning. I served on the Planning Commission, served on 2003 comprehensive plans, also on the steering committee for the current award-winning comprehensive plan, and we have to balance the responsible growth management, quality of life in James City County, and property rights.
Okay, here's a question. You can both leap at it. I won't designate who, but one of you can just pop up. Tell me something about your opponent that you like.
I'll start with that one. I like the fact that my opponent is willing to step up and be engaged in the community.
Carl?
Well, I like the fact that Mary has been involved in the planning process, which should be a good tool for learning what's going on in the county.
All right. Let me go back to Mary. Beginning with Mary, is there anything you plan to change in the next 4 years?
I think, and I want to say I am absolutely humbled to have had the opportunity to serve the citizens of the Berkeley District on the Board of Supervisors, and I really think we have made significant progress, and I am very proud of reducing taxes, reducing spending, enhancing customer service to the citizens of James City County, and expanding our economic opportunities in James City County, and I would certainly continue on in that direction. That is the direction the citizens want, managing, continuing wonderful quality of life in James City County, which makes us a very desirable destination for people. But expanding our tourism base, continuing in that and continuing on that James City County is open for business, and looking for those types of businesses that want to relocate here to James City County, that are going to provide jobs for our graduates from the local colleges, from our high schools, so that people can live here and work here.
Carlton, what do you plan to change?
Well, I think one of the things goes back to the earlier statement I made. I think we need to figure out how to do planning differently, real planning. I think there are two challenges here. Our citizens have said in the last two comprehensive plans, 2001 and the most recent one, that we are ignoring their advice and counsel when it comes to making land development decisions. We need to change that. And the way you change that is you change and expand the scope and involvement of citizens. There's a book that's written by one of the great planners in America called Peter Wolf. And I would just ask that the elected officials and the planning people take a look at that. Look, it's 26 pages. It's a section called, it relates to smart planning. And it's 26 pages. It tells you what we ought to be thinking about in planning and involving our citizens. And we can do that.
If I may, I served on the steering committee for the current comprehensive plan, and we went through extensive citizen engagement on that process, where we held citizen meetings. We had numerous televised meetings that were open, always open to the public, and going through, really hitting on the hot topics. And we really brought in, taking into account cumulative growth. I will say, in the last 4 years, this current board, the board that I'm the chairman of, we have approved less than 100 new residential rooftops, and we've expanded our economic development. And so I think there's always room for improvement. I'm open to learning new things, but I think we are on the right track.
All right, well, let me follow up.
Can I
Yes.
respond? I think there are two things you got to correct about that. You've only approved 100 units, and that wasn't because you changed public policy. You approved the 100 units because there's a recession. So it wasn't a change in public policy that made that change. The other thing is, when you're talking about the citizens and the involvement with the comprehensive plan, it doesn't mean very much when you get a plan and then your decisions don't reflect that plan. So I think we've got a fundamental gap between the planning process and what you say, and then the elected officials who take a different look when they're influenced by developers.
All right, well, let me follow up by asking on the comp plan. There's some assertion that the comp plan was hijacked by developers. Is that the case? I mean, do you read it that way, Mary?
Absolutely not. The comp plan is open to all of the citizens in James City County to provide input. There was significant input provided by our professional staff in James City County. There's a recognition that our tax base had become too heavy. The burden was all on residential homeowners. And so we have put a new emphasis on economic development and really balancing that out, understanding that we want a broad base of homes available for different incomes, and so that we can keep our graduates here that are working here. And I think a new emphasis was put on economic development because it is so important to the citizens of James City County. And I will say that we do have home builders that live in James City County, and they're citizens of James City County, and they contribute a great deal to our community.
Okay, let me pose the question to Carlton.
What was the question again?
Was the comp plan hijacked by the developers?
Oh, I don't know about hijacked, but I certainly think the end result is, if they didn't hijack the plan, they certainly hijacked the elected officials, because the elected officials haven't paid any attention to the plan. Let me repeat myself. The 100 units that were approved weren't approved because there was some change in public policy. It was approved because there was a downturn in the economy. You didn't have anything to act on. If you had it, you'd still be on the same path.
Okay. Moving along to a budget question. Is there anything that you would resize, eliminate, or consolidate? Carlton?
Well, I think, when you start talking about the budget, I would want to be careful not to reach uninformed conclusions about it. The budget reflects a lot about this county. It reflects a lot about people who work for the county, the school system. So there's a lot at stake. And I don't want to take it lightly and start speculating about what I do with the budget. I would say this to the people in the room. When I get there, and it won't take me long, we'll figure out what's important and how we will handle it. But I don't think I'd be fair to the citizens to do that prematurely.
Yes. Well, I have been on the board through 4 budgets through an extraordinary shift in our economy in James City County. And I'm proud to say, because of the reductions that we made through that process 4 years ago, because of that, we now have a AAA bond rating in James City County. And I'm extremely proud of that. I study the budget all year round. It's not just once a year when it comes in front of us and we adopt it. Always looking year round for areas where we can consolidate, where we can look for more efficiencies and to serve the citizens at the level that they expect. And I think that's extremely important. Looking at specific areas to consolidate, we have a stormwater department and we have an environmental division. We have a lot of institutional knowledge in our environmental division that can really benefit, where we can work together with our stormwater department. And, so I'm studying it. We're currently proposed at $164 million. We've always built in a contingency fund, and that has been a valuable resource and provided us even more economic stability in James City County.
Okay, here's an easy one. Where do each of you stand on the mausoleum at St. Bede?
Am I up? Thank you for that question. This is an issue that certainly a lot of our citizens are very interested in. They're very engaged in it. I've heard from a lot of the citizens that live next door to the mausoleum, that attend the church, attended a citizen meeting with about 30 residents from the Meadows, which live right next door. And I have been contacting citizens asking me, where do you stand on this? Proper procedure is, I am not going to take a position until it goes through the public hearing process. And that is why we hold public hearings. I certainly am happy to receive and take into consideration all of the comments I receive from the citizens, from the applicant, and from our professional staff. But I will not take a final decision on it until it goes through the proper public hearing process. And it's currently been deferred to December.
That's good. Well, look, I don't have enough information on that particular issue to deal with. I know it's a very sensitive issue. One of the things that, at least that I know about church life, historically church life, because I know a little bit about the Catholic Church, is the Catholic Church has a long history of being sensitive to neighbors. I had a son that went to a school in Washington, D.C. The school was located right in the heart of the neighborhood, and they worked like mad to make sure that they incorporated and involved people. I would hope that we would get to that level in resolution of this. It seems to me that shouldn't be an easy task, a hard task, where we sit down before it gets to the next level and have people work through that issue and get it resolved and take it off the front pages of the Gazette.
Well, let me ask you, because you bring it up, would either of you be willing to work on some mediation with the church and the neighbors, or is that not part of the process?
Well, I think that certainly we've encouraged the applicant, and historically, when I was on the Planning Commission, I encouraged this as a board member. Obviously, it vets through the Planning Commission, and those are a little different considerations, but always encouraging an applicant to go communicate what your plan is with your adjacent property owners and those in the community, and always encourage applicants to hold community meetings so that the citizens are informed about what the applicant may be proposing, and the applicant can hear back from the citizens and those that may or may not be impacted as to what their suggestions are, what their concerns are, and what their opinion is prior to getting, so that they can vet through in that process. And
Carlton.
Well, you know, here again, I think that this is why I was talking earlier about planning, and you know, it seems to me that if we move the planning process to where you've got a part of that planning process that talks about future development, you could put something like this there. I think with this sensitive issue, one of the things that probably the planning department, planning commission should have done is done just what I talked about. Refer it back to the community and say, look, we don't, you know, if we make this on a technical basis, that could be one decision, but let's make it on what's in harmony for the community. And that could have been pushed back and not voted on.
Okay.
But you know, sometimes we get so anxious to follow the technical part of it and kind of hold our nose and vote.
All right, I have to cut you off.
Okay, thank you.
Keep moving. Not an easy question, particularly in 1 minute, but if you have an example, it would be useful. Is there anything specific that you propose to slow growth? Carlton?
Well, I think that the specific thing that I propose that it can have an impact goes back to this thing of hot towns. If you put the right pieces in place up front, where you've got citizens involved, and not just the developers, not just the staff, the players in the community. If you put that in place, and it takes a little while to do it, I think that's the beginning. Because if you get the right infrastructure in place and looking at development, that's going to affect it. The other thing is if dealing with the capital budget, and making sure that you have a piece of the infrastructure before you start building. If you got a capital budget and you keep that capital budget moving, using resources to put in the infrastructure, that in turn sets the tone for what you're going to build.
All right, Mary?
Well, we've moved forward through recommendations in the comprehensive plan and also the Business Climate Task Force as to looking at we're updating our ordinances to make them consistent with the comprehensive plan. As I said, the comprehensive plan has more emphasis on economic development, where we recently adopted the economic opportunity zone, which limits, it's much less focus on residential, but more on bringing business and jobs to James City County. And, you know, number one, you want to have growth, because if you're stagnant, you're going backwards. And if you don't have some healthy growth going on in your community, you're going to end up having a reduction in the tax collections, and it's going to end up being a heavier tax burden on the citizens in James City County.
Okay, all right. Sort of a cosmic question, limited to county policy or your experience in the community. Tell me something that if you had a chance you would do over again differently. Sure.
I would say, and second time I've heard this question, and I've said it before, probably take another look at the water contract that James City County went into with Newport News. As everyone knows, there's been the water reports coming out 4 years ago. It was, I think, one of the first meetings I attended in James on the board, and at that time there was significant concern about water supply. And so we do have an option where we do not have to commit to the second $25 million, which I'm pleased that the board made that determination when we adopted that originally. But through good water conservation measures in James City County, we've had a reduction in our water use and a reduction in irrigation and throughout Hampton Roads.
Okay. Carlton, what would you do over again?
Well, I think there are probably a couple of things. I think prudently we need to look at the whole water contract with Newport News Waterworks. My sense is that when we did that, we didn't have as much knowledge about the process as we have now, both in terms of reuse of water, in terms of conservation measures, in terms of desalinization. We're smarter than we were when we signed it. But at the time we signed it, we didn't have that knowledge at hand. So I don't want to come off as blaming the staff. I think they did the best they could for the knowledge they had at hand. The one thing that I think we need to do differently is that EEO zone that Mary mentioned. That thing has gone forward in the same way that we've developed residential and commercial property in this county. There's a machine associated, and I don't mean machine in a negative way. When you get ready to build something, there's a whole slew of people involved. You got lawyers, you got architects, you got landscape people, and they're anxious to go. What they don't have at the table are the people that represent ordinary citizens. We need to put that in place, because I think by rushing it and doing it as business as usual, we've got an undefined concept that nobody explained. If you're a marketed person, the only people that understand the concept are the inside players.
Okay, I've got to cut you off and follow up.
Okay.
Mary just suggested that she might pause, if I understand correctly, on the second $25 million for the waterworks.
Yes.
What would you do, Carl?
Well, I think what you got to do is you got to look at it. You got to go back and look at it based on the current circumstances of the day. That would be the prudent thing to do. I would think that the new board ought to sit down, take a look at where we are, take a look at what has happened with the development in that whole arena regarding the water reuse, regarding desalinization techniques, regarding conservation. See where we are. Figure out, because I think the thing you got to be careful about, you don't want to make a decision and have the citizens and the business people in this community to end up with no water. I think you got to be prudent about that. You got to be smart about it. Take a look at it. See where it sends us.
Right.
May I comment on the EO? I do want to clarify. I know my opponent has been stating that I approved 8-story apartment buildings through the EO process, and that is absolutely not true. We have a 60-foot restriction in the code. And I also want to comment, the EO went through an extraordinarily long vetting process. It came out during the steering committee meetings. We had staff working on draft ordinances, and then it came to the board. We also asked, and the Planning Commission spent hours and hours working on this and getting feedback back and forth between them and the professional staff. The EO is an opportunity to expand jobs in James City County, and it's strategically located. And the ordinance is readily available. If you go online on James City County on our website, you can find the EO ordinance and read the EO ordinance. So it's not being kept in a secret vault somewhere. It is readily available to anyone in the public who would like to view it.
May I respond? Yeah, I think if we did a test in here and asked people, what does EO mean and what's the concept of it, I guarantee you'd get a failure. You would have 1 or 2 people who are inside ball players to know about it. The issue is it's a big tract of land. It's one of our largest tract of lands left. Why are we rushing to make it? You're talking about 20-year planning out, and yet we're rushing the process. I think the deal is this is another concept where we're walking along, treating business as usual, and this is not usual. We need to involve the citizens. That's who elects you. And whether you like it or not, you got to involve them in the process. We haven't involved the business department. If you're talking about jobs, you ought to have Larry, people from the business department talking about it. We ought to have the Thomas Nelson school people, because you're talking about higher education, higher skilled job. They ought to be involved. Right. I'd almost bet you they've not been involved.
Okay, I want to move on to the citizens' cards in a moment. I just want to ask a couple of quick questions. Should party affiliation be attached to local office?
Absolutely. I'm proud of the fact that I'm a Republican. I've been very clear and open about my conservative values. I'm fiscally conservative. I think it's quite clear, anybody who knows me, who's paid any attention to my voting record, would know that I am a conservative and that I'm very proud to be a Republican.
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is when you pay your taxes, when you have an assessment, you could care less whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a Tea Party. What you want to do is, does Stockton bring good judgment to that decision? And I think what has happened is by polarizing it, every decision becomes an ideological game. It doesn't benefit the citizens. The citizens who are looking, they're looking for an answer. I've not heard too many people, as I walk in, I must have knocked on thousands of doors, get all worked up about what are you going to do, Stockton, and what ideology do you represent? They want to know, are you going to listen? Are you going to get in there and be just like the other people and say you're going to do one thing and get tied up with the developers? What's it going to cost for them to have you in their hip pocket? And I assure them, I'm old, but I'm not stupid.
All right.
I mean to do what I say.
Okay. Not an easy question, but I want you to think about it. Who's a good role model in local government for you? An individual who's a good role model in local government.
It's an easy, I can think of a number of role models.
Just one?
One happens to be in the room this evening. It's Delegate Brenda Pogge. I think she's an excellent role model and a tremendous servant to the citizens of James City County, and works very hard up in Richmond on our behalf.
Sorry.
I would say a local person that is impressive, not because of his ideology, but because of his thought pattern, his care for this community, is John McGlennon. John, you know, I've watched him fairly closely. John thinks before he talks. He, you know, he is for doing what's right by the citizens of this community. And I'll tell you what's reinforced that. As I walked in the area that he has covered, I've had citizen after citizen say to me, Stockton, you know what, we might vote for you, but if you're not going to be in the vein of doing things differently from John McGlennon, get off my steps.
Okay, we go on now to the questions from the audience, beginning with this one. Office and retail space throughout the county is vacant while commercial development continues. How can we correct this while also strengthening our older neighborhoods?
Is that me first?
Sure.
Thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. I hear concerns from citizens. You're already giving me the red. Concerns from citizens about the where we're seeing some vacancies. I'm a strong believer in the free market system, and we do have we have to recognize that certain shopping centers are owned by they have private owners, and so you need to be respectful of that. And so, you know, certainly the government, we want to be there to help, but we don't want to be there to hinder, and we don't want to get in the way. One of the things, when I served on the Economic Development Authority committee with James City County, and also when I first came on board, was our Office of Economic Development had been very focused on always looking to land a big fish. And I had talked to a lot of small business owners, and they felt like nobody was reaching out to them, and that their voices weren't being heard. And so we shifted our focus in the Office of Economic Development to work much more closely with our small businesses, and also in Newtown, and really working together with the team of businesses in Newtown.
Okay, let me repeat the question. Carlton, office and retail space is vacant while commercial development continues. How can we correct this while strengthening older neighborhoods?
Well, it's not an easy task. I think the first thing we got to do is make sure we've got some dialogue going with the businesses, because it's when you have these shopping centers and they have an anchor store and the anchor store leaves, it's just a matter of time before the others develop that same kind of vacant look. So one, I think we got to start out dealing and talking to our business people in those areas, figuring out how we can help them. What's the best thing to do for them? I've had a little experience in business, so I think I could communicate with those business people. I think that's the first step, is to understand what their concerns are and how we can help them. Then at the larger level, I think we've got to figure out what kind of business we need to attract to the community. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
If the economic downturn continues, do you think the county can maintain services without an increase in taxes or fees?
Sure, and I want to add to that last one. I run a small business consignment shop, and so I certainly understand how tough it is to operate when you were dealing with the bottom line and be creative and adjust. So I absolutely can relate to what our businesses are going through. In response to your question about maintaining services, we've been successful in doing it so far, even though we had detractors that told us it could never be done when going through each and every budget that I've experienced as a board member. There's always room for looking for efficiencies or inefficiencies and looking to improve on those so that we're not wasting taxpayer dollars.
Okay, all right. Carlton?
Well, what was the question again?
That was a response. That was a response. That
Yes.
was a 30-second response, not a...
I was answering.
No, she was answering my question.
I answered two questions in one.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, Carlton, the question was, if the economic downturn continues, do you think the county can maintain services without an increase in taxes or fees?
Well, it's going to be tough. I think, from my perspective, there aren't any funds unexpected on the way from the state or from the federal government. So it's going to be tough. We're going to have to look at every piece of it to figure out what's best and what can be saved. Now, on the question of taxes, and I've been asked this question before, the presumption is that if you come in and the perspective of different ideology, the first thing you want to do is raise taxes and stick it to the citizens. I'm probably as conservative as anybody in this room when it comes to spending other people's money. So I think if taxes becomes an avenue to fix it, we need to handle it uniform, together, thoughtfulness, and be able to approach the citizens before you take that action so that they know why you're doing it and what's the rationale and what's going to be the outcome.
Okay.
May I just add on that real quick? And I do want to say that we're going to be coming into another very challenging budget year next year. I believe I've shown proven leadership on the board, excuse me, in the last 4 years. We're going to be looking at reassessments. We're waiting for the governor's budget to come down so that we can see what changes that are going to impact James City County. With reassessments, we are expecting a reduction in our property tax collections. That's going to affect the county budget.
Okay.
We also are going to have to take into account our schools and maintaining the most excellent schools in the state and the country.
Let me stop.
Can I comment on that?
We're going to write our own questions.
Go ahead.
When you start talking about tax assessments, we've got a hidden issue that's going to hit the voters right in the pocket. We've been playing around and ducking this whole issue of flooding and polluting in the county. And the presumption is that those particular business or residential areas that are affected by it, they ought to handle it themselves. Now, let me tell you what's underneath that. If they don't handle it and they get knocked off the tax rolls, where do you think, who's going to make up the difference?
Okay, and we're going to treat that as a rhetorical question so we can keep moving. But related question, rhetorical answer. The Parks and Rec budget has been reduced in recent years, yet these are shown to maintain and grow the quality of community life. What specifically do you see as the proper funding of Parks and Rec? Carlton, do you want to start with that?
Well, obviously, park and recreational life is a key part of our city, the trails and so forth. We ought to do whatever we can to fund it. I think that's a fundamental part of the life we have in James City County. But at the same time, parks and recs are going to be right in the configuration with everything else. So we would do whatever we can to fund them based on the available resources for that.
All right, Mary?
Okay. I'd like to comment on my opponent's comment about flooding and pollution, that we haven't taken that on. And I want to say that I have rolled my sleeves up. I've been involved in a project, and specifically in Jamestown 1607. While it is not going to solve everything, it's a start. And I would like to correct, my opponent referred to it as shrubbery. It was my son's Eagle project that took a year to complete because it was a coordinated effort with James City County as well as VDOT and the HOA in James City County. And also I started the Stormwater Program Advisory Committee and made sure that we were funding the best we could, given the current economic situation we're in, our stormwater department and tackling our issues as we prioritize them and move forward.
Okay, so we're going to move on. What is the single most important issue facing the Board of Supervisors in the next 4 years? Single most important issue. Pick one.
I would say continuing to provide strong fiscal management for James City County and continuing to strongly support our schools in Williamsburg, James City County. I serve on the School Board Liaison Committee, and so I work closely with the current school board members and am aware of their concerns, and we work together on the budget. And I think that's going to be a challenge moving forward in making those assessments and continuing to provide the high quality of life and the services the citizens in James City County are expecting. But the budget, when you look at our national economy, you look at what the stock market's been going through and the global markets, we don't live in a bubble, and so that's going to be an ongoing focus and priority for the boards to come.
Carlton?
Well, I think you can say one word, but it cuts across a whole gamut of things. I think we need to wrap our hands around the whole growth thing. We need to put the citizens right in the midst of those kind of decisions. We need to manage prudently so that we take care of our schools and our employees. We need to do all of those things as we work through this recession until we get things in order. But I think it starts with putting the citizens right in the play of what we do. You can't do it isolated.
Okay. Are you currently living in the district you seek to represent?
Me first?
Sure.
Yes. I've lived in Berkeley district for 14 years since I moved here, and because I've lived in the Berkeley district for 14 years, it's provided me the extraordinary opportunity to serve on the citizens participation team with the 2003 comprehensive plan, provided me the opportunity to serve and represent the citizens on the Planning Commission in James City County for 3 years, and also to currently serve and represent the Berkeley District citizens on the Board of Supervisors. And have lived in the Berkeley District and plan on continuing to live in the Berkeley District. And it's an absolute honor to serve the citizens, and I never forget who I work for.
Okay, Carlton?
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me deal squarely with that question. My address is 3201 Fowler's Lake. 3201. My phone number is 258-8728. So if you want to call me, you can call me. You can visit me at 3201 Fowler's Lake. I have a website that you can go to. So if anybody is unclear about where Margaret and I live, we've owned property in this county since 1996. And you can check that with the county records as well.
Okay. What are your feelings about ICLEI, I-C-L-E-I, and Agenda 21? Carlton?
Well, I think that's kind of a misnomer in terms of the things that the citizens in this county are worried about. As I walk around, we've got some people that that barely putting food on the table, worrying about sending their kids to school. And this is a diversion. And I hope I have time to say this. I met one person doing my walking that raised that issue. And he was adamant about it, told me he was discussing with both parties. And then he said, I asked him, I said, well, now who is taking the property in James City County? And you know who he said was taking it? John McGlennon. And I said, well, my God, we can go to sleep now then. And John's now into taking property. I think it's a misnomer. It's a diversion from what the citizens of this county are all about and need to be about.
Okay, Mary?
Yes. Well, the International Committee on Local Environmental Initiatives was brought to my attention through Agenda 21, citizens coming to me. This was citizen-driven, expressing their concerns about what Agenda 21 was and what ICLEI was. And I did my own research, and I shared their concerns as well. And so I brought it to the board's attention, and we have this board will not renew the membership to ICLEI. United Nations Agenda 21 is not an agenda that's in the best interest of James City County. it's a undermining. It's kind of a creep on private property rights, and so I think it's a very important issue. Policy creep. It can be liberty creep if people aren't paying close attention, and thank goodness we have citizens that are heavily engaged, and I was listening to those citizens.
Bill, can I respond?
Yes.
You know, the cost, the annual cost to belong to this organization is $1,200. We just saved $25K on consultant fees that was in the budget because we're a member of this organization. Now, you figure out the math on that. I'm not worried about your ideology. Seems to me that's a win for James City County.
I'm looking at the principle, not the cost.
Okay. Besides the suggestion made earlier that local offices be nonpartisan, what would you do to lessen the partisanship on the Board of Supervisors?
Well, my view is I don't think politics, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Tea Party, are going to make the difference in terms of day-to-day policy making. We got to wrestle with the issues. We got to take them head on. And my view would be is learning how to work with the board members. I believe we have the opportunity to be the best elected body in this Commonwealth if we sit down and work together. That's the first thing. You got to work together. And I think in working together, you can't have feuds in the public because that creates an impression. You know, if you go out with a couple and they're feuding, the thing is you don't want to go out with them anymore. So we've got to, if we feud, we got to feud in a way that doesn't destabilize the public's confidence in us. We can do that.
Well, number one, my job is to serve the citizens of the Berkeley district and James City County, and you know, certainly, we hear a lot about the board and the relationship. We have a very open board. We operate out in the open. We have dialogue out in the open. We agree a lot of the time, and there are times that we disagree, and we have those discussions out in the open. While people may talk about this, whether or not it's civil or not, we are a board and we're passionate about what we do. With that being said, we're a very successful board. We've reduced spending. We've maintained our services to the community. We've reduced the size of government, enhanced customer service, and we have a AAA bond rating. So I would call that, I'm proud of that success.
Okay. Two more questions. Where should county tourism money be spent?
In James City County.
Yeah, right. Specifically.
Well, and I think this is part of enhancing the tourism sector, which is extremely important in going through challenging times with the economy. And those types of dollars are looking to invest to enhance on the county fair, or attracting new, be it fishing tournaments, be it cook-offs, and the bottom line is it's investing those into enhancing the tourism in James City County, where we're getting the return directly, and we have direct control over that back end. I do want to comment on, with regards to that with tourism, and this is a little off the topic, but I'm very proud of the fact that the Virginia. We're having a Virginia Veterans Tribute on 11/11/11, and that they really want to bring a lot of people into the community, and I mean that's just one aspect of it. And we've been able to provide land, and they're bringing in a tribute tower.
Okay, Carlton.
Well, I think that the whole tourism budget, tourism is a very good part of our economy here, and we need to work with the people in that business, particularly the hotels, to try to figure out how we can help them. You know, the attractions for the Civil War, the arts, biking, golfing, are things that can draw people into it. We need to work with the schools, because we want the schools to start at the time that they start, so it doesn't interfere with families bringing people here. I think there are a number of things that we can do to work with that industry. One of the larger things that we've not tackled is the competition between timeshare and hotels. I've got a friend who owns a hotel has lost his shirt because the people are opting to go to timeshares as opposed to hotels. So we need to work with that industry to figure out what we do along with marketing and hoping to get more, continues to get state funds.
Okay, this is a complicated question I'm going to reduce down to a easier form. It's to both of you. Will you report all contributions of $100 and more publicly in advance of the election?
I follow the reporting, what's required by law as far as campaign finance reporting.
Well, the reporting conveniently allows you to report a lot of it after the election. That's why the question's posed. Will you report any of it before? I mean, in the last cycle?
I report it when I receive it.
Carlton?
Yes, I think it's very important that there be transparency in the money we get, and I would be open right now to have the press look at every dime that is gotten. If they want to talk to someone who has contributed to me, they may get a little aggravated, but I would say go at it. What you'll find is nobody has made a contribution to Carlton Stockton with a quid pro quo. That's not my character. I'm not going to be bought off for $1,000 or $2,000. I don't have any money, but I'm not going to be bought off. So any money that has come in down to the lowest amount, if you want to look at it, Bill, you could have your investigative reporters go through the entire report, and I'll be happy to have my treasurer provide it.
Okay, last question. What do you think of the Newtown bell tower?
I have to say I'm thrilled. It's been I'm thrilled that I've been able to be a part of it, serving on the board. As I was describing it to somebody the other day, it's been a real sprint. And the gentlemen that have been working on this and getting this done really had a tremendous vision and are making it happen. And I think it's long overdue. I think it's tremendous to be able to have a veterans tribute in James City County, in Newtown, where there's going to be on Veterans Day and to honor our veterans. We have a lot of military families that live in James City County, live in the region, and to have an opportunity to show our appreciation for their service in this way and to bring them here to James City County is just a thrill. I'm thrilled that they've chosen to do it here. It's built in Cincinnati, Ohio. They're going to be escorting it here, and there's going to be parades. And you can go online and find out the details of the itinerary on Virginia Veterans Tribute. I think it's .com. So thrilled.
Well,
about it.
I think it's a good thing. I'm not sure I could add to that. I mean, I think it adds to the character of our community to recognize what has gone on. So I don't want to prolong it to embellish it. I mean, I think it's a good thing. It's good for our community.
All right. By flip of the coin, we have determined that in the closing arguments, which are 2 minutes, if I can remember this right, does Carlton go first?
I think. Do I go first?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Look, I want to thank you for coming and listening and framing these important issues. It's very important. You know, once I heard a minister ask this question, and the question was, is your family that you joined when you married better off having you? And I believe the answer to that in my situation is a resounding yes. In our family, politics are pretty tough. You know, you've got people all over the ideological map. I know my grandfather, who was active in politics in Martinsville, was a staunch supporter of Eisenhower. Margaret's grandfather was a World War I veteran and a very conservative man. So when we get together, you know, if you can't hold your own, it's pretty tough. I believe that I learned something through that process. It's a grueling process in my family, let alone what I've done in work. That I bring from that experience the wisdom that I think will be useful for the board to work across ideological lines. The ability to work in a way that will help broaden the scope and direction and feel for this elected body throughout the Commonwealth. I think we could be the best elected body around if we work at it, if we resolve those family issues in a way that doesn't unsettle the public. We need to change, as I said earlier, how we plan and grow. And let me repeat this. I think those of you who are serious about planning ought to list 26 pages. You ought to go home. You don't have to buy the book. Take a look at that. It speaks directly about what we've talked about tonight, about citizens' involvement. I believe I have the ability to talk candidly with business people and to help them grow. I think I know how to do that from my business experience. And finally, this is an important election. It's a very important election. And I'm depending on your vote to make a difference, because I think we can change the tenor of how we do business in James City County. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience, and thank you for your questions.
Mary?
Again, thank you for being here this evening, and it's been an absolute honor to serve and represent the citizens of Berkeley District and also James City County as a whole for these last 4 years. And yeah, I've been very proud of my record on protecting private property rights, stood up for citizens in Ironbound Square that were at risk of losing their home for a redevelopment. Similarly, in Forest Heights, I had a citizen where I helped keep her home, where people were saying, "Oh, well, we have to take the house." Well, no, you don't. That's their house, and the house is still there, and it will remain there. As a board member from day one, we eliminated the stormwater tax, reduced spending about $15 million, reduced the size and scope of county government while not compromising the services to James City County. We've opened 2 new schools. We have a new police headquarters. And in addition, public safety has not sacrificed, because they were reaccredited this year, and they were the only police department in the state Commonwealth of Virginia that received a perfect score on the reaccreditation. So I'm certainly very proud of that. Additionally, we're one of only 67 counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia that have a AAA bond rating. And that is extraordinary given the economic times that we're dealing with. And I think that shows just good, solid fiscal stewardship on behalf of the taxpayers of James City County. I would be honored to continue to serve the citizens, continue to expand economic development, expand our tax base so that the tax burden doesn't rest solely on the shoulders of the homeowners in James City County. And again, I will never forget, I'll constantly be a policy hawk, if you will, and just continue on in looking out for the taxpayers' dollars and making wise fiscal decisions and maintaining the high quality of life that we enjoy here in James City County. So thank you all very much for being here this evening.
All right, thank you again, all of you, and let's have a round of applause for our candidates.
Thank you.
Good job.